everyone, welcome to the 429th episode of Just Shoot It, a podcast about filmmaking, screenwriting, and directing. This episode is brought to you by patrons Robin DeVernon Writing, check him out on IMDb, Ryan Kindle, who just re-upped his patronage. You can check out his website, obsoletemedia.co. And I'm throwing Clinton Cornwell in here because we owe him an email, and he just had an awesome interview on Making Movies is Hard about his new movie that came out. So you should check that out. Anyhow, I'm Oren Kaplan.
And I'm Matt Oren. Today we've got a catch-up between myself and Oren, like the old days. I feel like there was a period of time where it was just you and me a bunch.
Today we're talking about pitching. We're talking about not just Zoom backgrounds, but also the things you say and show and talk about. Matt had written a couple treatments recently and gone to some shoots. I have done similar things. So we were going to dive into some realizations about treatment writing and pitch methods, which I'm a big believer that in the fact that they evolve over time, that the way you maybe pitched 5 years ago is different than the way you pitch now. And you know, we do a lot of commercials, so we're probably going to hew towards the commercial world, but I'd like to think that this applies to pitching, you know, to get people to invest in your feature film, to get actors attached to your project, to in a job interview, in a marriage proposal. I think like a lot of these techniques that we will talk about and ways to present our takes on things should hopefully apply to things beyond commercials as well. But before we talk about that, we're going to catch up with each other because Matt, I've been dying to know, what have you been working on lately?
What have I been working on lately? Well, yeah, I just got back into town. I was out in Kentucky/Ohio for 5 days, I want to say. And this was like the first travel job I've had in a minute. And it was the first where like my daughter is like a person. You know, basically it's been about a year since I did a travel job. Before that, I was traveling actually a decent amount, but like with like a baby, when the kid can't walk, it's not that big a deal. Do you know what I mean? Like you kind of set them down and do the things you need to do or whatever. I think,
yeah,
you know,
they can't walk the walk. They can't talk the talk.
Yeah, literally. Yeah.
Total fakers.
Yeah. But now she's like a little person, and it was harder emotionally for sure. You know, I think I was just like, oh man, I like miss my family in a pretty big way, and also the guilt of like, oh, I'm going to be gone, and my wife has to like pick up all of the slack of the stuff that I normally would do.
Yeah, if you're listening to this podcast and you're about to embark on making a feature film and also potentially having a child, I highly recommend doing the feature film first. Yeah. That's you're kind of being facetious, but that's 100% correct. Yeah. I mean, I'm not. Yeah. Remember, we had this entire bet about you becoming a father and making a feature film.
Yeah, that's true.
It changes the entire calculus of your life, your job, your finances, your travel, your ability to travel, your responsibilities.
Your focus. Yeah. Your interest. Yeah. Your back muscles.
I mean,
that's true also.
I'm laying on the floor like every day.
Yeah.
You know, wrestling with my children. It's not something a regular middle-aged human does.
Yeah. Well, you know, you just kind of, you're thinking about different things. So it was great. You know, we stayed in Covington. I was very charmed by it. It's with a team of people that, we work with all the time, our pals over the PPS group. Bobby, previous guest of the show, flew out. That was really fun. It was cool. It was great. Also, the weather was perfect. It was about to get hot. You could tell like wrap drinks were like a little muggy, but before that, it was like pretty nice the whole way through.
So the shoot went well. You haven't shot with Bobby for a while.
I haven't shot with Bobby for a while, and it was nice actually because like my previous game has changed pretty significantly, and it was fun to remote in with him, show him how I do it. I had boards that like I've animated. I like had your board artist actually did a great job, and he gave me
Julieta.
Yeah.
Wait, which one, Andrew or Julieta?
Sorry, Andrew.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, Andrew. Yeah. He was rad.
Did you ask him for layers?
Uh-huh.
Oh, cool. And he was just like, yeah, no problem.
Yeah.
Or was he like, okay, you want layers? Okay, yeah.
No, it was like from the top. I was like, hey, I need layers. And so for people listening at home, what we're saying is rather than getting flat JPEGs of your storyboards, I was asking for certain elements to be drawn on a separate layer and delivered as a PSD so that I could animate them. In After Effects or in Premiere, whatever you need. So like arms can move, people can slide around in frame, that sort of stuff, like light animation, just to kind of get timing and all of that down. Yeah, so it was great. Like I said, we'll get in. I feel like there were a lot of, realizations. I feel like there's a lot of learnings from that job. It had been a minute since I shot with Bobby, the travel, all of that stuff, acclimating. It took me a second to find my sea legs, to be honest. Like it was like I hit my groove eventually, but it took a beat. And I wonder if part of it is I didn't sleep very well, but Deb, or the producer that we were working with all the time, had said like, oh, normally I would fly in a day or two earlier, but because of like holiday schedules and this and that, we ended up shooting earlier in the week than normal. And I do think there's some wisdom to like giving yourself a little bit of time to acclimate. What's your ideal travel job schedule? You got a tech scout, you got a fitting, you got a PPM, you got a shoot.
Yeah, it's interesting because sometimes I heard of some like kind of big time directors that literally just like do everything remote and they fly in the night before the shoot.
Yeah.
Shoot, and then fly out the last night of the shoot. And there is something kind of awesome about that, especially if you have like, I think this specific director that I had heard about like has like, a really big team that can fly and lay the groundwork and the DP that he's worked with a ton that will scout for him and all that stuff. But yeah, for me, I guess like a perfect shoot schedule, let's say it's a 2-day shoot would be like flying Monday late morning from LA, getting in at like 6 p.m. or whatever, having dinner. Next day, pre-pro meeting, fittings, tech scout. Next day is a down day, but we can kind of make any last minute changes. And then we shoot for 2 days. So that would be like Thursday and Friday, and then fly back Saturday morning.
Yeah, having the down day in between, I think, is smart so that you can kind of give yourself a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah, I'm like a horrible jet lagger. Carlin actually just told me about, she did a job in South Africa. And she used an app that helped her. Like there's an app that like helps you acclimate time-wise, your sleeping schedule.
Tells you when to like, oh, that's interesting.
Like you should go to sleep. You should wake up now. You should do this. You should do that. You should drink coffee now. Like, I just texted her to see what the name of it is, but she has not responded to me.
Just doing deep work.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's my move.
Yeah. I made the mistake of landing late. Like I didn't I wanted to fly out of Burbank rather than LAX because it's much more convenient. Anyway, I was just out of whack there for a second. It took a while. Oren, I'm dying to know, what have you been working on lately?
Well, I have a shoot this week. It's a 3-day night shoot, which is like on the topic of insane sleep schedule. I told my producer today, I was like, hey, am I supposed to be doing something? Right now it's Monday night. It's 9:45 on Wednesday night, Thursday night, and Friday night. My call time is 10 p.m. and we wrap at 7 a.m. So like, I'm going to be walking out of the location and it's going to be like the world is just starting. So I'm like, should I be like trying to stay up super late and sleeping in, or take a nap in the afternoon? My problem is I can't sleep in because I have to like take my kids to camp and do all this summer stuff. So he's like, the first night is going to be so easy. You're going to be like, I don't know why I was even worried. And then the second night is going to be hell. And the third night, you're going to wish you never lived. So
I think the answer is like sleep as much as you can, like bank as much sleep as you can. Maybe.
Yeah, I know. It's just so hard with what we do because like people are always, you always need to talk to someone about something. So it's just hard to be like, sorry, it's 3 p.m. I got to go to sleep for 3 hours. Like,
and you're trying to book the next job as well, right? So like, you're writing a treatment, or you're taking a phone call, or you're talking to an agency or whatever, and then and that they're all still on daytime hours,
right?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be rough. Yeah. Maybe don't drink caffeine and just sleep as much as you can.
No way. I'll get crazy headaches if I don't drink caffeine.
Yeah.
I'm addicted. But I also, this job has a lot of animals in it. And so I very rarely get to do this. But today, because we're working nights, they're training the animals at night. So today, they're actually, after this podcast, I was maybe going to go to our location at like 11 p.m. and like see the animals there. But before the podcast, we have 2 locations. I went to the first location from like 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. And I was like, ooh, I should bring my daughter because there's animals and training and low stakes,
There's no one there you have to like schmooze, basically.
Yeah, everyone there is kind of like trying to show me stuff, and I just have to like, maybe did the fitting too. We did like the whole fitting for the animals like at night. And so... I brought my daughter. She got to play with the pig. She got to play with a guinea pig, which apparently there's no relation between pigs and guinea pigs. And we had puppies and dogs and cats and all sorts of cool things. We got to see them do tricks. And my daughter was very enamored with the craft service table, as you would expect.
Sure.
She's like, can I have another juice box? I'm like, I guess. What the hell?
Sure.
Anyhow, so that was really cool. The other thing that happened today was kind of interesting. I'm curious to take your take on it. Is I'm doing the color grade for a job, and I was remote, so I have like my iPad. I see what the colorist is doing. One of the agency guys was in the color grade in the color facility with the colorist, and so he was on Zoom, and we were talking, and there's some things in the edit that I just don't understand. For instance, there's like 3 different scenes in a row that are each in a different location. And we shot, I like to shoot wide and close on every scene.
Sure.
Get an establishing shot, then like a closer shot, just so we have something to cut to. This happens to have like the talent is talking to camera the entire time. So there aren't like a million options for coverage when you do that. And I was like, why did you guys, like, I didn't understand why they only used close-up shots. And so in the color grade, when there's probably like 4 people from the agency on and like all the colorist team and a few people from the post house, I asked the agency guy, I was like, hey, can I just ask you like why you guys use all these close-up shots? Like, and I said, like, did you guys not, I was trying to not be passive aggressive, but I don't know how to do it.
Like, what was wrong with my wide shots, guys? What's the deal? Yeah.
No, it was more like, and I don't want to be like a know-it-all, but I said something to the effect of like, I kind of find like, when we shoot these wider shots, they give a little more context for the location. Like if she's in one location and then another location, if we're only using the close shots, we don't really understand why we've even switched locations.
Yeah.
And I think he said, I think it was a timing thing. Like that shot was too fast or whatever. And, obviously while he was saying that, I pulled up my wide shot and I shared my screen. I was like, I'm pretty sure it fits here. Look, he's like, I don't know. That's kind of the client approved. And I kind of felt like that one conversation could maybe make it so that they wouldn't want to hire me again.
Sure.
Do you know what I mean? And I kind of instantly regretted having it. Do you think I am?
I think you maybe made a mistake. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I think there is
like, obviously my ulterior motive was for him to be like, you know what? Yeah, that wider shot does work. I don't know why. Let's put that in.
You can't do that. At that point, the client's already approved everything. You're in color, right? So like, you don't go to color until you get a final cut. The final cut isn't final until the client's approved it. So there is that thing. I can think of instances where I've been, where we've all kind of worked together to like compromise and make things as good as you can. And like, one person wants one thing and another person wants another. And there's all these different stakeholders and you kind of finally land on something that like, deep down isn't perfect or isn't even as good as it could be. But based off of all the different people, that's what you're living with. You're stuck with it. And then someone will walk in and be like, boy, you guys didn't use any of the wide shots. I thought they were pretty good. Or like, why didn't you use the wide shots? It solves X, Y, and Z. And you're kind of just like, yeah, dude, I know, but we just all friggin' figured it out together. You're right. And that's what makes it really frustrating. And so like, when somebody does that, and like, especially if you're around your bosses or like the people you just kind of talked into like signing off on something that they weren't, no one's happy about, it is frustrating for sure. Even especially when the point that's being brought up is right,
it's valid. Yeah. I guess, when you make something and you feel like some people that got into the decision making, like I had nothing to do with those shots. Like I did like a very quick rough director's cut, and then they just took it from me and never talked to me again about it. But they're letting me come to color, which is awesome. And they're using the colorist I recommended, which is also great. But also he just listened to our podcast. He told me today.
Oh, nice.
He's friends with Nina Meredith. So he listened to her episode, and he created her thing that she talked about. Anyhow,
it's a nice grade.
I just am wondering why, like the director understands how to edit,
Yeah, sure.
Like we choose shots and sizes and coverage based on storytelling. And so I think sometimes it's not like they figured it all out without me. I think it's like they were like, okay, well, this works. And I guess this works and this works. And here, this is the timing. So this works. But it's not like, I don't know. I just kind of feel like it's not the best version of it. And I wish I would have been a little more involved. And I guess it was a little of a Hail Mary attempt to do that, but it might have torpedoed my chances of getting hired again. Anyhow,
maybe.
Just a thought. Like obviously it all stems from me wanting it to be good.
Yeah, of course. And the politics of it all are always, as directors, you're oftentimes kind of insulated from that. And that's our privilege. But then, that insulation also separates you from like taking credit for the win or getting thrown under the bus. You know what I mean? Like you're kind of the fall guy as well sometimes. Well,
anyhow, on that note,
I hope the grade looks good.
The grade looks great. The grade is probably my favorite part of that shoot.
Awesome.
Of that project. But yeah, on the note of kind of saying things to people that will potentially hire you or make your project a reality, let's transition into our main topic, which is treatments and pitches. And just to set this up, Matt had just written a treatment, a pretty big treatment for a commercial a few weeks ago. You were up against multiple people. I know one of them. Yeah, I could see he texted me about it. He's actually the one that told me you won the job in an odd turn of events. You had worked with a layout designer and you had seen some sample treatments. And I think that kind of changed your approach to treatments. You saw a sample treatment of a very recent commercial that is an amazing commercial that we both geeked out on. And I think you said there were some takeaways there that you wanted to talk about on the podcast, and I'm dying to know what they are.
I felt really reinvigorated, and you're right. I texted you and I was like, oh, I feel like I had a breakthrough on this treatment and I'm feeling really excited.
A quick context thing, a treatment, for those that don't know.
Sure.
It's usually we're making a document between 5 and 50 pages of text and images, maybe some GIFs, something that is our vision as a director, our take on your script, right? So you wrote a script for a commercial, for a movie, for a TV show. Here's how we think we're going to do it. And we talk about the tone and the color palette, the cinematography, and whatever else we think is important, the storytelling and the beats. And then we present it to someone. Hopefully we get to do it live in person, or at least over Zoom.
And in this case, actually, I knew that it was unlikely that I was going to be able to present it, which was part of
the calculus,
reframing how I thought how I was going to put this thing together. But so going back to a point that you made earlier about how treatments evolve, and your process evolves, I think that when we were first starting out, treatments weren't really a big part of whether or not we booked work. It was about relationships and about your reel. And
I mean, I remember when people would say, could you just write a paragraph about how you would approach this? And then we'd like write it in the body of an email and send it.
Yeah.
And maybe if we were getting crazy, we'd include an image.
Maybe if you were speaking to something, or I really want it to be like this style, or like I want to reference this image in some way, or this frame, or we're parodying this trailer or whatever. But yeah, they were very, very bare bones. And that I think speaks more to like us coming up in sketch than it does. Like the commercial directors were already doing pretty extensive treatments by the time when we were just starting out and just were kind of,
or even music video directors, you'd see them write like 5 pages or something.
Yeah. But now, they're in InDesign. There's tons of like custom, super high res like GIFs. And, you were just sharing a deck with me that's like 40, 50 pages, right? Like they're intense. They look like, motion magazines. Anyway, there was that interim where I felt like I was doing more writing than I was layout design or image research or any of that stuff. And that's always where I felt like my skills really shined through. I'm a better writer than I am a graphic artist. And I feel like through kind of funny circumstances, I was looking at this layout artist and checking out his work, and that, you see like a bunch of different examples of the treatments that he likes, or the treatments that he had done, the ones that he's the most proud of. And there was a specific director who's quite famous and whose work I have always admired very much, who he did a handful of their pieces. And what stood out to me was the writing, the tone, and frankly, the quantity of copy on the page really turned my head, because the images are awesome and they're speaking to, all of the different stylistic elements that they're putting together and all that stuff. But really it was the writing that was just like outstanding to me. And which makes sense, because if you like look at, you've got this great artist, this layout puller, pulling images and like putting things together. So of course, all of them are going to look great. Like if you've got an awesome designer who's there to like help make things awesome for you, then there's going to be the bare minimum is still going to be quite impressive because they're professionals, right? And so like the differentiating factor besides your take and your taste is your ability to write. And it just clicked for me to be like, oh, that's right. I gave myself permission to really write in my voice much, much more than I had thought was appropriate before. I think I've said on the show, even like, I don't know that people read, like they read headline copy, but like when you get into that body text, do they retain it? Do they even read it in the first place? Or do they just kind of skim really quickly on their phones? I wasn't sure. But I just wrote every word like I was assuming they were going to read it for real. And it felt incredible. So like when I texted you, you were like, an
example of like a way you would have done it in the past versus a way you do it now. I'm assuming in the past you also wrote text to be read.
Yes, I wrote text to be read, but I probably wrote 5 times as much copy in this document. Like I wasn't in the new way
you wrote more.
The new way I wrote probably literally 5 times as many words. Like I'd been shying away from large blocks of text. And this time I just leaned into it and said, no, like I'm a writer. I'm going to write. And so I'm going to write you like a full page of copy about the visual style, a full page of copy on this, 3 or 4 pages on a character and what makes them sing and what makes them great. And let that be the guiding principle for everything. But the thing about it is like, really what I'm saying is I needed to acknowledge what makes me stand out as a director. And it's really easy to be intimidated or to think that what you're supposed to do what everyone else is doing. You see all of these other treatments, you and I share treatments with each other all the time of like, oh, I think this is really good. Or I think this is really good. Or man, I'm so jealous of this image pull. And like, that's part of my process, but I let it overshadow the things that make me great. And that's really what I'm trying to talk about with people. Basically, it's just like acknowledging your innate special skills and leaning into those, because some people are pure visualists. Do you know what I mean? Like, you look at a Tim Nakashi treatment, they're incredible, and image dense, still with plenty of copy. He's a great writer too, but like, like just talking about the spot was more impactful to me than showing what the spot was going to look like in certain circumstances.
And so now you did not get to present this treatment. You just make
Correct.
This
yeah
PDF file or InDesign file or whatever, a link, and you send it off, and then you find out that you got the job.
Yep.
Based on the people at the agency read ostensibly 3 directors.
And they did say great treatment.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Did you feel like when you were on set and casting and prep that they had read the entire treatment, that they were aligned with what you had written?
So I put my, typically in a treatment, you talk about the visuals, you talk about the casting, and eventually you talk about the script, right? Like, you kind of are trying to build a narrative of like painting the picture in people's minds of what it's going to feel like and sound like. And then finally you get to the script, which they're all quite familiar with. I will write extra jokes and punch things up. That's kind of part of, the value proposition of a comedy director, is like, how do you plus these ideas, right? Yeah. Plus the funny even. And I know for sure there were gags that were in that section that they really liked and insisted on us executing on. So yeah. Do I think that they got all the way to the thank you page? I think probably, but I have evidence that they made it pretty deep into it for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone's going to flip through the entire treatment, right? But like, what's the part where they're going to
read? Yeah. What are they going to absorb for sure? Yeah.
And as I think but the last 2 or 3 years for me, I've been putting that script section up front because I do think it's like the most important section. Because they know their script so well, and going in, like, I'd say, like, intro, why I care about this project, tone, what it's going to feel like. And then I try to get into the script as soon as possible. So many times it's like, hey, let's just talk about the script right now. And then we'll get into the details of what everyone's wearing and what the lighting's going to be like or whatever. But like, this is the important thing. Your script inside and out. So I'm going to describe what you see as we hear the script, and maybe I'll pitch some jokes or changes. And that whole presentation, like I just showed you this treatment I'm doing where they sent me a script that had a lot of dialogue in different locations. And I wrote a lot about the transitions from location to location and how we'll do it. And I try to add in like GIFs that show what that looks like visually. So hopefully if they stop reading on page 5, they've kind of got my whole idea.
They've already got it there.
They can keep going another 30 pages if they want.
I think that makes a ton of sense, but is a good, because we have talked about that before. And in seeing this other director, I think even we looked through it together and you were like, oh, wow, they put it pretty late in the treatment. It was, I don't want to say buried, but it's far. It was like probably page 25, 30, somewhere in there that we're really getting into the treatment. But the thing that I try to do with all of the execution slides, we'll call them, is less worry about the technical in certain circumstances and more about how it's going to make them feel, or how it's, how the audience is going to perceive it, that sort of stuff. the results, not the process quite so much. And I know that you do a lot of like VFX driven stuff. So sometimes the process is the thing that they really need to understand that you have on lock. But I do you agree though?
I try to not really talk about
technical they don't want to hear it. And every time I've ever, like, you can see when you start talking about cinematography in particular, but VFX too, eyes glaze over, and like the part of the copy, giving yourself the room to be like, hey, we're going to make this great in these ways. We're going to plan things out. We're going to execute it here, X, Y, and Z. Like, here is the plan, but not in the nitty gritty details, just in evidence that like there's a plan to pull this off in the first place, so that by the time we're shooting, we're good to go.
Yeah. I mean, I believe there's like an art to talking to a wide audience and maybe a non-technical audience about cinematography. Mm-hmm. So instead of saying like, we're going to use wide lenses, like 16 millimeter lens to do this like overhead shot that's rigged on this cool new rig that we got to see like the hands unboxing this thing, you say, we're going to do this like cool Wes Anderson-y type of inventory type shot, Where, and then
you can say flat lay, you could say overhead even, but wide angle. You say we're going to make it look
like
epic. We're going to see it from top down
style. Yeah. And then you have an image from Moonrise Kingdom. Like you just mentioned freaking Coen Brothers and Wes Anderson, a treatment, like 80% chance you'll get the job.
Sure.
Some art director will be like, I love those references. You're like, everyone does. But yeah, I think you're right also about talking more about like how something will feel, but also just knowing you're not overstaying your welcome too, not going for 5 pages on wardrobe.
And I want to be clear also, the copy that I wrote was quippy. It was first person. It wasn't afraid of having personality, which is maybe the other thing. Sometimes when you get into the razzle dazzle of like trying to romance a client or an agency, it can get a little antiseptic, and like just making sure that my voice was really clearly, injected into the treatment, I think was a big part of it as well. And again, that's about like trusting that people are going to read it.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a must. If you don't have personality in the writing, then you might as well not write anything.
Yeah. Don't do it at all. Yeah.
And that's the hardest part I find in a treatment. And I try to kind of write my intros like stream of consciousness, like improv style. Like, okay, this is a commercial for paint. I just painted my house a few months ago, and this crazy thing happened to me. And this is and I thought to myself, I can't believe I got to do another freaking coat of paint because this was such hell. But now with this product, you only need 1 coat, whatever. Like I just try to just really get in there, and then hopefully, I don't know. I do try to write really short sections.
Yeah.
So that people don't get bored.
I know. And like, it got in my head, Oren.
Sorry.
I think, oh no, that's okay. Also, I think that the way that you do jokes and the way that you do personality is very different than the way I do it. Like I think you like a one-liner a little bit more. Like I like to bury a joke. It's like a little bit longer form, a little more writerly, and you like punchy,
But yeah, I also made a treatment recently. I went all out. It was for this project that I directed it last year. It was for kind of this well-known company. I mean, I feel like, is there any reason for me to not talk about a job I lost?
Well, the reason would be like that creative team, maybe they liked you for other things or want to bring you back for another account that they're on, or they're not going to be on this account forever. So, people don't like dirty laundry being aired, even though
I feel like this is
your skid marks.
You know? And I still like the creative team and everything. It's not like I have issues, but I was the incumbent, which, means you did the last version. You made the first Saw. Now they're asking you to make the second Saw, right? But in commercials, this annoying thing happens sometimes where you win the job and then the job comes up again and they ask you to try to win the job yet again. Like, oh, Matt directed this commercial last year for Rakuten. Let's have Matt pitch on it again against 2 other people. And so you're in this unique position as a director where you know everyone very well. You know the client. You can say like, hey, I come preloaded with all this knowledge of how to do this well. And here's like how we're going to do it even better this time around. Right. But you're up against people that are just new and they've never worked with them before and they have amazing previous work. And so it's like, there's no mystery to you anymore.
Carrie Galogly, who was on the show years ago now, I remember telling this, a development executive now at Netflix, back then at AMC, we were talking about like proof of concepts for features and TV shows and stuff. And she told us that it's easier to sell a promise and like the promise of the new director versus the reality of the old director. Even if they loved the old director, the potential of what it could be is alluring.
No, and I mean, that's like why I like kind of work with like a lot of different people, you know? So it's like, I'm just as guilty of not hiring the incumbent many times. Cause I'll be like, ooh, this person did this thing. This costumer just did this thing that I'm a huge fan of. And like, I can't believe I get to work with her or whatever, you know? And even though my last customer was amazing, I'm working with a new customer. So like, I get it, you know, from a selfish point of view, but for this job, I took nothing for granted. I said, okay, they're having me pitch again. I knew that I was one of the directors I was up against had directed, this very famous actress that they were trying to get for the project. And I was like, oh man, like, why not hire her? She already has a relationship with this talent and, you know, maybe it'll help them solidify her as a cast. And I was like, okay, I got to work really hard. And I went and I made a video. I just put my kids in, I filmed all weekend. I edited together. And then I made on top of that, this 30-page treatment. And part of the treatment had like, hey, last year I talked a lot about casting, but then I realized that I had very little to do with casting. It was all kind of done by the client. So this year I'm not going to talk about casting as much, but I'm going to
literally say that. Did you literally say that in the treatment? Yeah.
I literally say that in the treatment and in when I presented the treatment. And I presented the treatment, I put pictures in my video, you know, like video of us on set. I put images in the treatment of us having a great time on set together with like the actors from last year. And I had like this awesome presentation, I thought, on Zoom. Everyone was cracking up. Everyone's like, you nailed it. Everyone's like, you killed it. I even like talked to like my first AD on the job last year. Was friends with someone that worked at the agency. And she was like, oh, he said your presentation was like amazing, you know, like unmatched. Like I feel so good about you getting this job. And then at the end of the day, they just like texted, you know, on Monday morning. They kept delaying, like, oh, we're going to let you know on Thursday, then Friday, then this weekend, then Monday. And then it was just a text that said, hey, everyone really likes Oren, but we've decided to try this new director.
They went in that direction.
It was not the director that had that famous actor on their reel.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So it was like, nothing. I don't know. It was not any of my calculus of like, or kind of trying to guess why they would choose the other director was like, none of it was right. Cause they just chose this random director I didn't know. And I didn't even know I was bidding against. And as we like dug in a little bit deeper, the feedback we got was like, look, the new people on the creative team just wanted to try someone new.
Yeah. It makes me think of, we had Lawson Deming on, again years ago as well, who's the founder of Barnstorm VFX, but he was talking about creative decision making, and especially in VFX, but anything that's like, you know, long term, sometimes you just get a little highway hypnosis. You're just on the road for so long that you can't tell if a new pitch is better or just new, just fresh. Right. And I think that it's easy for a creative team where they're like, okay, well, we're planning the next year's campaign, and you look at all the stuff that Oren did and this and that and whatever, and you just kind of you get joke fatigue. You just kind of, you've seen it a bunch of times, and even though you came in with a fresh take, it's just easy to want the new thing, just to be seduced by it immediately, you know?
Yeah. I also feel like I kind of really helped build this thing. It's a very unique type of project. It's like an hour long branded thing.
Presentation.
Yeah. Presentation. And we really had to figure out what it was last year. And now I feel like we figured it out. And that was like, my pitch.
Tim, trust me, this joke is going to work.
Yeah. Tim Cook, listen to this.
Yeah.
And then they went, with someone else. So I feel like anyone that gets it this year is going to have a little bit of an easier time and an ability to focus more on the important things. And so, yeah, I guess it's frustrating in that regards. But my point is just that you can pitch your heart out, and sometimes it's just something totally out of your control. Like, that today our good friend of ours that's been on the podcast before told me he just lost a job. He wrote like a 35-page treatment. Agency loved him. He was the recommend. And then last minute, they chose a different director who'd written a 3-page treatment. So it's like those treatments, the presentations, they're, they can really help you win a job, but sometimes they're not enough to get you what you want. So right now I have like 4 current pitches in like different states, and 2 of them I'm like the incumbent. I directed last year, and now I'm like kind of coming from this place of fear because I thought maybe incumbency was going to be like my superpower, but now I'm realizing that could also be like a super weakness.
On the fast food campaign that you're the incumbent on, where does that shoot?
Atlanta.
Oh, okay. Because I was up for that brand, also was shooting the spots in North Carolina, and I didn't shortlist. I don't think.
Was this in the last couple of days? It's my job. It's the one.
Really?
Yeah, it's the same one. But they still don't know if they're gonna do like a triple bid or a single bid.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So obviously I'm hoping it's a single bid and we just do it. And
sure. Yeah.
From what I hear, they're pretty happy with like my last 2 goes at it with this brand. But, but it's just every time there's new people and it's like, hey, why are we only seeing one option? Show us 3 options. Yeah. So then you got to like, when people are sticking up for you, you got to go even farther and have an even better pitch so that you make them look good, So, and then I have 2, kind of smaller things, and I don't even want to write treatments for them. But it's like, what if the other thing, I don't get the other things? It's just like,
go through. Yeah, sure.
Just the life of a filmmaker is just like constantly trying to get the next job off the ground. So anyhow, but I do wonder sometimes, we had Scott on the podcast last week, and he was talking about Dave Meyers, the director, who
he said it was the most charming guy.
Yeah. Potentially the most charming guy in the world. And I do think like, that our presentation material, just the longer I do this, I kind of realize it's just like a small part in you winning the job.
Yeah. I think there's that. I think there's also like, so charm, confidence, which are kind of the same thing.
Which I'd say are, very similar.
But I think they're more simpatico than they are one-to-one the same.
I think charm is like, if you're not confident, but you are charming, then you will come out and say, I'm not confident about this, but this is how I'm going to approach it, Yeah.
Yeah. But I think there's a confidence in knowing that you're not sure how you're going to approach something too. There's the personal confidence of like, oh, I'm a good filmmaker. I know how to do this work.
Well, it's that famous story of the happy endings pitch. Did we talk about this before? The creator, David Caspi, supposedly when he pitched happy endings, he was really nervous. And he said, to the people he was pitching to, like, hey, how's it going? I'm incredibly nervous about this pitch, so I'm just going to read what I wrote off this paper. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah.
And then he sold the show. And it's like that to me is charm, is being honest and observational and comfortable enough to say what you're thinking, and in a way that is insightful and poignant, and relatable.
Yeah. So I mean, I think it does count to a certain extent, but I think that there's also the X factor of like your heat, like your status, you know. I think if you're a director that's coming in who's done a show that people really like, or a movie that people really like,
Payne coming off, you know.
Sure. But yeah, definitely. But even like lower down the tiers as well, I think like, oh, this person directs for this cool show that I think is awesome. You know, that stuff does count for something, for sure. Which is another version of confidence and charm. But like, I think that there's that X factor of like, agency creatives love pop culture and love media. And so if they think you're cool because of the other work that you've done inside advertising or outside of advertising, I think that is a factor for sure. And is why we were talking, I think, off mic about like all these directors who are name brand directors who are rostered at different companies who've only done 2 commercials. And it's because they're busy shooting movies all the time. But like, that's an interesting, that's part of the aspect of it all. And so when you come in as an unknown, let's say, or a nobody, right? Like, oh, it's just your EP vouching for you and the work that you have on your reel. You can be charming and you can have a really great take, but that X factor of the other person who made the movie that everybody loves, or just won a Cannes Lion, or whatever it is, that stuff can edge you out for sure.
Yeah, I do think like the very famous people don't pitch in the same way. Like they don't need, like if Peter Farrelly is going to direct a commercial, the agency's probably like, hey, let's see if we can get Peter Farrelly to do it.
Yeah.
And then they talk to Peter, and then he's like, fine, let's do it.
You know, I remember talking to an EP who repped very famous directors, and they would like take the call where they're multitasking or whatever. Then they're charming and funny or whatever, but like they still have to pitch a little bit. They still have to go for it, you know.
They can have a conversation, but they're not making these like 40-page treatments of the video over the weekend.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So that, I mean, I feel like that's kind of more our space where we are. People might have heard our name, but they don't really know our work inside and out. And they want to see what our take is on their material. So the better our take is, the more charming we are, and the more confidence they have that we're going to make it rad, the higher chance we get the job.
Rock and roll.
Okay. So yeah, we're curious what you guys think. Please let us know. Email us, justshootitpod@gmail.com. Let us know how you get work. I don't know. I do realize this podcast has just turned into the like, how do you get work and how do you make a living as a filmmaker podcast? But it's like, in the long run, it's the only thing that matters.
Core question. Yeah, for sure. How do you get, how do you keep doing, how do you get better, and how do you keep doing? Yeah. It's all part of the process, baby. Well, Oren, do you have a second or two more to endorse with me?
Sure.
Unpaid endorsement.
So my unpaid endorsement it's LA specific, but I think that you can maybe extrapolate out for whatever town you're in. And it is the meeting spot that I picked for meeting with some talent relatively recently. Did I tell you where I ended up going, Oren?
Trails Cafe?
Trails Cafe is where I went. So for people outside of Los Angeles, Trails Cafe is like literally like a little stand in Griffith Park, totally out of the way. It's picnic tables. It's a very limited menu. Like I get like a iced tea there. They serve like egg salad sandwiches and pastries. It's pretty bare bones. And the reason that I picked it is because A, I love it. B, it's quiet. And C, I'm not going to run into anyone I know. And the fancy actors that I'm meeting with aren't going to run into people that they know either. I mean, to a certain extent, like I've never run into someone at Trails Cafe where I was thinking like, if I went to go get 'em Tiger in my old neighborhood, 100% I would run into at least one person, probably 4. And it's nice to be like, oh, hey, how are you doing now? This is so-and-so or whatever like that. There's a time and a place for that. But like when I want to have like a meaningful conversation, like an artistic conversation and really like pitch my little heart out, I don't need to be like, oh, hey, Oren, yeah, the mocha's really good today as well. So I think you can take that and use that for, meetings all over the place. But like, don't go to the trendy place. Don't like, and it also says something about you. Do you know what I mean? I was saying like, oh, I'm not worried about like...
Look, our budget's not that big, okay? You're not doing this for money.
No. I mean, look, he knows the budget already, that's part of the conversation before we even get here. I don't have to have that conversation, fortunately. Like,
right.
I'm here to talk about how to make this thing awesome. So that's my endorsement is Trails Cafe, but matching the meeting spot to the vibe you're trying to transmit.
I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I got a couple things. I'm going to give you the bad ones first. This one's like barely an endorsement. Carlin, our friend, texted me back. I'd asked her what app she used to adjust her sleeping schedule when she flew to South Africa. And it's called the Time Shifter app. And she said it worked for her, that it's awesome. It just helps you shift times.
Thanks, Carlin.
My second crappy one is Lactaid. It's milk. I think it's like easier on your stomach. I don't have lactose intolerance issues more than the normal person, though I know drinking cow milk maybe makes everyone a little weird. I'm meaning specifically the Lactaid milk, the Lactaid brand of milk.
For your cereal and coffee and stuff?
Yeah, for everything. Cereal, coffee, kids, cooking, whatever you use milk for. I mean, I mainly use it for cereal, but it is, not only is it like easier, I think, on your stomach, but it lasts for freaking ever. And I have no idea why. Like it'll last, buy Lactaid milk. It lasts like 4 months or something. I like it. It tastes exactly the same as cow milk. It just lasts forever. I don't know why. My third endorsement is just some realization. It's something like I've known and kind of thought about a lot, but never said out loud, which is if there are databases for work. I mean, I guess maybe I'm specifically talking about commercials, but there's this website, Source Creative. I've talked about it before. You can upload your commercials, your work. Even if you did a spec commercial, you can upload your work there and tag it with like all the things that it's in. There's a few different places. I mean, iSpot kind of automatically grabs commercials from the air. But anywhere where there's like a database, like Shot Deck is this great place. We don't really get to put our things on there, but I've noticed they're putting a lot of indie film stuff in there. But if you can get your work into like one of these databases, it's pretty awesome because people will start referencing your work in their pitches. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, someone will be like, why don't we just get the person that did the original work?
Sure.
So I'm noticing like some of the stuff I've uploaded to Source Creative is like in these various repositories, and I've seen it on like Kive.ai, and like just people have pulled stills from my work, and people have even told me like, oh yeah, I used this thing that you directed in my pitch. And it's just like it's just getting your name out there. Probably 99 out of 100 times people have no idea who you are and that you directed it, but one time out of 100 people will be like, what's that from? And then they'll find you. So I'm a big believer in like spreading your work as far and wide so that other filmmakers can use it as references and maybe keep you fresh in the conversation in a weird way. And the more you tag, the better. Like, I think I've gotten people contacted me because they searched for like kids, suburbs, transitions or something on Source Creative, and 3 spots came up that were all directed by me. I find it helpful to just have your stuff out there. Upload your stuff, tag your stuff, let people know about your stuff. I know that's all like filmmaker 101, but get excited when people reference your work. And I get actively worried. Sometimes I'm pitching on this thing now, and I'm like, sometimes you don't, know who you're pitching at. Sometimes you don't. And in this specific case, I didn't. And I was really afraid to reference some commercials because like, what if the person I'm pitching against directed those commercials? But every once in a while, you'll be the one that directed those commercials.
You'll be the one. And you'll be like, yes, perfect. I will say Shots. If anyone at shots.net is listening, you guys need to work on your website because, Oren, I know you love talking about how it's great to upload stuff to Shots. It is the clunkiest shit, man. It is rough. It is rough.
Net?
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't think so?
No. Are you on the same website I'm on?
Source Creative.
Why Apple's Music is crushing it?
Yeah, but like uploading, no. Browsing the stuff is fine, but when it comes time to uploading your work, like I feel like stuff times out all the time. Yeah, the spots are all over the place. It's hard for you to tell if you've successly uploaded something or not.
I've had a decent experience with it, but I don't know. Maybe it's just my fiber.
Good. Maybe, Oren.
Well, anyhow, thanks everyone for listening. Again, we'd love to hear from you. You can DM us on Instagram. You can email us justshootitpod@gmail.com. You can find us across all social media at justshootitpod, or me, I'm at @okaplan.
And I'm at Mr. Matt Enlow across all social media, including Letterboxd. I see you, Letterboxd followers. This episode was edited by Noah Bayshore and produced by him as well. Thanks, Noah. With additional producing by Tyler Small. And you're listening to music provided by the Free Music Archive and the artist Jazar. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.